Okay, a quick public service announcement before we jump into the main episode. There's a slight change in format for today's video. We're going to be going out and about to various places with various different cameras, so there's going to be some change in the visuals, which I think it's kind of cool, kind of keeps things interesting. Secondly, I'm going to be referring to a couple of things during this episode, in particular a book that I've been looking at recently, which is specifically this one. I'm going to put a link underneath the video. Just a quick disclaimer that I am not an affiliate, I am not getting sponsored or paid to mention this book. I think it's just cool and it fits in with the topic of today's video, and it saves me having to do a lot of the work myself, so I'm very happy about it. So jumping into the meat and vegetables of today's session, we're going to head outside and get going. It's nearly Christmas, the weather's awful, and as we get closer to the end of December, I'm going to be wearing more and more disgusting knitwear. But for now, I really wanted to spend today's video talking about what I think is a very important but under-discussed topic, and that is kind of the idea of productivity and burnout, which is something that I think we all suffer from at some point. You see, being an author, especially an indie author, where you have to do all of the work, is not exactly an easy thing to do, and when you're juggling writing and marketing and running a business, often across multiple different pen names and genres, it can get extremely stressful. So I kind of started off with the idea of thinking about, how can we get more done with the time we have, but then I also thought about, well, how can we measure what's actually working and what we want to focus on so that we actually feel good doing it and we don't end up getting burned out. So I sat down and I thought, well, how can we come up with some kind of system that's going to make life less stressful for me and then in turn hopefully for you as well. And I was all ready to go, and then I discovered a book by one of my favourite indie authors, Joanna, that had just come out, which is called Productivity for Authors, which is coincidentally exactly what I want to talk about today. So it's really looking at how we can get more done in less time, but also be less stressed about it as well. And I was lucky enough to be able to go down to London yesterday to have lunch with Joanna to discuss this amongst various other things as well. So in today's episode, we're going to have a look at some productivity tips from Joanna's book, and I'll make sure I put a link underneath the video where you can go pick up that book if that's something you're interested in. And we're going to go have a look at the trip down to London as well, which is another example of trying to get too much done in too little time and everything going wrong. So let's take a trip back in time to meet yesterday Nick.
All right, it's a busy day today. I've got to get down to the train station, got to get to London. I'm meeting one of my favorite authors. She's a New York Times bestseller, and she's just released a brand new book all about productivity, which is kind of the theme of today's episode. I've got to get all that done, got to get to London, do some shooting, have the business meeting at lunch, get all the way back here again in time for my little girl's nativity play, which is at 6 o'clock. So busy day, a bit of a challenge for time, so let's see if we can do it.
Station car park was full, so I've had to park across town. So I'm late.
Right, it's delayed anyway.
To our seats through here, which we can't, so I'm just gonna stand for an hour. So yeah, nice seating. Thanks, trains. I was gonna do some work. I brought the laptop, but not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna chill out for an hour or so and watch the scenery go by. Yes, I had managed to book a train ticket well in advance got myself a first-class seat and was looking forward to a nice croissant and a cup of coffee on my trip down, but ended up spending an hour sat on my behind on the floor, although I did have a very nice man for company who, perfect, didn't speak the entire time, so thumbs up. And we'll get back to my epic journey in just a moment, but I want to cover some of the productivity stuff that I mentioned earlier on, and you'll find out why I'm doing this in my office and not in London in just a moment. But the first thing I want to cover is this idea of productivity and burnout. And these two things kind of go hand in hand so far as, authors and business people in general, they look around and they see other people doing really, really well, and they set themselves expectations that may be unrealistic. And this is where dangerous things can happen. If you try and do too much and you inevitably fail to follow through on that, then that can lead to some serious issues, particularly with burnout, which is basically where everything just gets too much and you have to take time off, which is not what anybody wants. So one of the first things that we like to look at when it comes to how productive you can be is looking at goals. So goal setting is particularly important, but it's also quite difficult because it's quite hard to set a goal that is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound, or the SMART goals, as they call it in the corporate world. And this is a kind of an acronym for coming up with a goal that is something that you can hit, that's actually going to be measurable. So how will you know that you've hit this goal? So one example might be, you don't want to say, I want to become a full-time author within a year. What you want to do is you want to say, I want to release 4 novels in the next 12 months, grow my email list to 5,000 people in the next 12 months, and things like that. And these are goals that are much more measurable and specific, but they all lead into the ultimate goal of yours, which is to become a full-time author. All that other stuff, all that detritus of modern life that comes at you from every direction and overwhelms you can be put to one side if you have those goals set, because you know whether or not something is going to support that overall growth. You know whether to focus. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But for now, back to the epic journey.
Alright, we made it off the train. I hate trains. I've got to get across town. Wish me luck. Right, so the train was late. I need to get to lunch. So I'm going to try and find somewhere to film afterwards. Should probably get a Christmas card. They lent me a pen. Thank you very much. Thank you. Cheers. Right, card bought. Off to lunch. Pretend that I remember to bring this from home.
Right, before we go into lunch, and quick spoiler alert, I completely forgot to give her the card. But I want to talk about something that's important, the next kind of phase of this productivity, anti-burnout journey that we're taking, and that is looking at the kind of work that you're doing. So we talked about goals, setting the right goals that support where you want to go in such a way that you can actually measure them and get them done without having complete overwhelm. And that kind of leads on to what I want to talk about now, which is the idea of what kind of work you're doing. And Joanna sums this up really well in the book, actually, and she calls it busy work versus important work. And this is something that I think she and I both lived with in the corporate world, where a lot of people make their careers based on their ability to look busy. But as a solopreneur, author, online entrepreneur, generally speaking, you are answerable to yourself. That's not going to fly. So we have to look at this kind of ingrained need that we have of always being busy, because as entrepreneurs, we know that to grow a business, we need to do something. So we try doing everything, and that inevitably leads to a lot of work. And on days where we don't do a lot of work, we feel like we haven't achieved something. So what I want to do is really kind of think about what kind of work you're doing. So we talked about the goals, setting goals, and meeting them. Now, looking at the work that you're doing today, tomorrow, next week, next year, the trick really is to look at the kind of activities that you're doing and figure out if they're worth spending time on. So an example of that is if your goal is to write 4 novels in 12 months, then you need to be writing, setting up editors, getting cover designs booked in, building launch teams, building your email list, setting up advertising, those kind of things. You might get drawn into certain things on author forums or on Twitter, or you might get invited to go to conferences or to meetups and things like that, where going might be fun and it might be busy work and it might make you feel like you've done something, but it might not be something that actually directly supports the goals that you've set yourself. So this is the idea of busy versus important. It feels good to be busy because you feel like you are getting something done, but you need to look at the numbers at the end of the day. Is what you're doing supporting your business goals? And if not, you need to think about what else it is you could be doing. And this is especially difficult for authors and entrepreneurs, especially at the beginning when you're still growing and you're still getting to know people and you're networking. You kind of have this compulsion to say yes to everything. You know, somebody invites you to be part of a box set, you know, you say yes without realizing all the work that's involved and whether or not it actually moves the needle for your goals that year. Someone might invite you to be part of, you know, a social media group, or they might invite you to be a moderator on a forum or to speak at an event. And all of these things are cool things. You know, they might be useful in and of themselves, but they might not be what you need to do right now. So learning how to say no while still maintaining a positive relationship with people is very difficult, and is not something that is often learned quickly. It took me a long time to be able to say no to people, and it was about being ruthless with my time, you know, thinking, you know, how much do I value my time in monetary figures, and then thinking, well, would I spend that amount to go to this event, to take part in this collaboration? So the next time somebody invites you to do something that your initial gut reaction would be, yeah, okay, I think unless the reaction is something like, oh my God, that would be amazing, yes, how do I do it, how do I do it? Then probably the answer is going to be no, unless it's something that directly supports your goals. So really thinking about that then. So busy work versus important work, which kind of builds upon that goal setting, and then also taking it one step further and learning how to say no. So you don't want to fill your calendar with stuff that isn't going to help you grow your business. So with that in mind, let's head back to lunch.
Right, we're back.
We've had lunch. And we need to get a selfie from somewhere, but it's raining.
Selfie doing selfie.
By the bush. That was a really good lunch. We talked about everything from AI to traffic to anything you can think of. And Joanna's got a new book out that's all about productivity. So I'll put a link in the description for that. But for now, I'm just going to head back to the train station. I've got about 2 hours to make it back for the little one's Christmas play, so it's going to be tight. Wish me luck.
So we've talked about setting goals, we've talked about the difference between busy work and important work, and we've talked about the importance of being able to say no when you need to. And I think the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to this productivity conversation and avoiding burnout is looking at ways that you can be more efficient and more effective. So taking the time that you have in a day, which may be half an hour a day, maybe 5 hours a day, maybe just at weekends. It varies depending on what spare time you have available. But the more effective you can be with that spare time, the better it's going to be for you long term. Because if you've kind of built this goal setting system and you have a kind of a framework in mind whenever you're considering what to do, where to spend your time, then looking at ways that you can be more effective is something that naturally leads on from that. And there's going to be two main areas where you're going to be able to get the best results, and that's going to be collaboration, outsourcing, and automated tools. So collaboration is something that we kind of mentioned in the previous segment about, when to say no to people. And you should expect that sometimes people are going to say no to you as well. But if you can team up with other authors in your genre and people at a similar level to you, then you can combine forces and get things done a lot quicker. So if you're running a promotion, you can team up and you can multiply your results really quickly. If you're working on an anthology, you can get different people doing different things and making things work a lot smoother. And collaboration is something that can be extremely effective when it fits in with your goals and the goals of everyone who's involved. Outsourcing is another big one as well. And this is kind of a huge relief. It's not really something that beginner authors can take advantage of too much. It's something that you can look at as you grow, but being able to offset certain parts of your business to other people is an absolute lifesaver. So we mentioned about putting a value on your time. If your value is, say, $100 an hour, and you can get somebody to do something for $20 an hour, then that's an easy win for you. So once you have that figure in your head, it becomes quite easy to justify hiring people to do that day-to-day stuff that isn't meeting your core objectives. So, email, fiddling with tech, that kind of stuff. Something that anybody can do. And the third thing is looking at automated tools as well. So one cool thing that we have in our business is automated email sequences. So I don't spend 6 hours a week writing emails. I still send out 3 to 4 email newsletters a week, but I've standardized the whole process. I click a couple of buttons and people get the emails, depending on whether or not they're in an automated sequence. And my system figures all of that out so that I don't have to. Other tools could be, book formatting tools, grammar checkers, things like that, just to make your workflow a little bit easier. And whatever task that you're working on, there is probably an automated tool that can do it for you, probably faster and probably better than you can. And so as your business grows and as you start to focus on your goals and hitting them and seeing your business grow, this is where you get to start having the budget that allows you to outsource and allows you to use those automated tools to make your life easier. But it all starts with that conversation we had at the beginning about setting the right goals in the first place, focusing in the right areas. So from a marketing standpoint, there's so much that people could be doing to grow their business that they try and do a little bit of everything, even though it feels like work because you're busy. It's not important work. So you have to be able to say no to that, which is kind of what we're talking about in this entire episode, is making the best use of your time, being productive, but being productive on your terms. And that's kind of what I want to help avoid for you guys watching this, because we're all busy, we all get stressed from time to time, we all get frustrated. But if we always have this set plan, this set roadmap that we know we need to follow, life just gets a lot easier. And with that in mind, let's head on back to the train.
All right, I've got 11 minutes. Let's go.
There she is.
You were amazing.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to get more content like this, just check the links underneath this video for a bunch of resources. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell. That'll tell YouTube to recommend more videos just like this one, and you'll get a little notification every time I release a new video as well. So with that in mind, that's it from me today, and hopefully I'll see you all again very, very soon.